Iowa was tough on you. Where do you go from here?
Well, listen, Iowa was exactly what I thought it would be. You know, from the time I got into the race until the last Des Moines Register poll, I was polling between 1 and 3, and I got 2. So I pretty much got what I expected. We didn't spend nearly as much time out there as we spent here, and we spent almost no money out there. So it was pretty much what I thought it would be, but I thought it was important for me to go out there to respect the process, because I intend to be the nominee, and I want to win Iowa when I'm the nominee in the fall. It's going to be very important for us to win the presidency. So you got to go out there and spend your time, but I knew that was a Ted Cruz state right from the beginning. He worked it hard, he had a great organization, and he matched up philosophically with a lot of those voters. So congratulations to Ted, good for him, and I'll see him this week in New Hampshire.
You may have gauged it, but do you think voters will respond now that they've seen how people have stacked up in Iowa and have that momentum for a Cruz, for a Rubio?
You know, traditionally New Hampshire doesn't do that, as you know. New Hampshire's almost, does the opposite of what Iowa does, and they kind of pride themselves on making different judgments. And so, I don't think I don't think anybody did so well last night or unexpected that it would create some new momentum. I mean, everyone going in said Trump and Cruz were fighting for 1 and 2, and that Rubio would be in 3rd. And once Dr. Carson kind of lost steam, there was really no competition for 3rd place, and everybody else beside Dr. Carson, between Senator Paul and Senator Santorum, we were all bunched together, within about 2,000 votes of each other.
You know Donald Trump well. Is he less of a winner now?
Of course he lost. So, I mean, you can't be an unabashed winner when you've lost. He lost. That's okay.
Does that take that from him, his ability to say he's the biggest, the best?
No. Donald will always say that, so it doesn't matter. Donald said that when he was declaring bankruptcy, so, that's Donald's persona, and that's his internal belief, and I admire him for it. That's helped him get where he's gotten to in life, but, this is a different game and a different business now than he's ever been in before. So now he'll come to New Hampshire, and what matters is how do the voters in New Hampshire react to what we all do this week. This is a complete jumble up here. No one has emerged as a big front runner except for Donald in the polling, and so now we're going to see what happens from here.
When you are trying to find that lane as a governor, maybe the establishment piece, what is your argument when you see the momentum that Rubio has, when you see the money he has? You haven't raised nearly as much money.
No, I haven't. Listen, I spent time working in the towns in New Hampshire, not working Fifth Avenue in New York. And Marco spent a lot more time on Fifth Avenue in New York and in places in Los Angeles. That's fine. He's gotten the money to do it. But remember something, he spent $5 million more than Ted Cruz in Iowa, and he came in 3rd. So money doesn't mean everything. And by the way, Jeb Bush spent $15 million in Iowa. We spent $500,000, and he got 1,800 more votes than we did. Who do you want managing your money, Kelly? For the guy who spent $500,000 to get 2%, or the guy who spent $15 million to get 3? So, the money thing has always been about not having the most, but having enough to compete. And we have enough to compete, and between ourselves and the super PAC that's been supporting the effort, I think we've spent about $16 million here in New Hampshire. So, we're certainly not crying poverty.
When you make the ask to a potential donor, what do you hear back? Do you hear that some people say, this isn't your year, Governor, they've written you off?
Oh, well, sure. Some people have gone with other folks. And so, yeah, normally I hear it from people who've gone with other folks. You hear some people who say they're not with anybody, because they're still sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out how this all is going to flesh itself out. And then you have other people who say, I believe in you. I believe you would be the best president of the United States, so I'm going to be with you. You get a variety of all three. And I bet you if you talk to any candidate, they get a variety of all three, maybe with the exception of Jeb in the beginning, who was getting everybody to say yes. But then again, all that money's been being spent, and it hasn't really produced much of anything yet.
Are you surprised that, given your executive experience, you make the argument that you've been tested, you've had the bad headlines, and you're still standing, the way you connect with voters at town halls, are you surprised that hasn't translated into money and higher polling?
Money, no, because donors make those decisions based upon whatever the feeling of the moment is. And so when you have a good day, that's when you get on the phone with donors. You get an editorial endorsement from the union leader, you get an editorial endorsement from the Boston Herald. You get on with donors right away because they see that's good, and then they're much more apt to write you a check. So I don't worry about that, because over the long haul, if you do well, those folks will come along. As far as polling is concerned, listen, we're polling along with everybody else in New Hampshire other than Donald Trump. We're within the margin of error of everybody here. I mean, nobody has broken out here in New Hampshire except for Trump. So I'm not surprised about that. There's 12 candidates, there's lots of people to choose from, and now people are going to have to make a choice a week from today.
When people are choosing between you and John Kasich, two governors, he's got a different story. Ohio, in some ways a better set of facts in terms of Ohio than you have with New Jersey. Is the picture in New Jersey a drag on you? Is it the Bridgegate still a drag on you?
I don't think so. Nobody asks me about it. I mean, so I really don't think it is. I think it's still, listen, I think that much of Bridgegate was an exaggeration by the media. And, you know, if you look at some of the other things that have gone on in the last couple of years and the lack of attention they've gotten compared to that, I think that's part of it. But again, that's in back of people's minds now. No one asks me about that on the trail in Iowa or in New Hampshire, and very, very rarely. So no, I think, and plus New Jersey's story has gotten better and better. So like in 2015, we had our best year of private sector job growth in 15 years. Not just in my administration, in 15 years. So some people like to use old numbers. New Jersey took longer to come around, but that's because we had a bigger hole to dig out of. And by the way, I have a Democratic legislature every day that doesn't want to do the things that I think we should do to be able to grow our economy. If I had a Republican legislature like John's, I'd have a record better than John's.
When you look at the issue of immigration and how it has really animated conservatives, especially in this campaign, when you look at the problem, and I know you have a plan, a lot of border security, but for those undocumented persons who are inside the United States, what should happen to them?
Well, listen, nothing's going to happen to them in the immediate future, except that if they violate the law and they commit crimes, they need to be deported, and the law needs to start being enforced again about deporting people. But I've said all along, you're not going to deport 11 million people in 2 years. That's 15,000 people a day, every day. How do you do it? Who makes those arrests? Where do you put them while you're waiting to send them back home? How do you send them back home? I mean, that's where an executive asks all these questions. Someone came to me with that plan. We're going to deport 2 million people or 11 million people in 2 years. When you're an executive who had experience in running government, you say, how? How would you do this and this and this and this? Other people who don't have that experience just say it. And so, you know, what we'll do is we'll get our border secure. We'll get people to have confidence in the system again. We'll be deporting people on a regular basis through the regular law enforcement process. And then once the American people have confidence in us again, then we can have a conversation about what we do with those that are left.
Legal status, perhaps?
You know what? I'm not going to speculate about what it could be. I'm going to have to gauge the mood of the American people. It's our country, and they get to participate in making the decision about who gets to stay here and who doesn't. And I think that Senator Rubio found that out. When he tried to force amnesty on the American people, they weren't real happy about it. And so, you know, he's learned that lesson for sure.
When you look at the Democratic race, and in New Hampshire, independent voters can play in either party, and Bernie Sanders is a huge draw, how do you look at the effect of the Democrats on what may be the available pool of voters for you?
Yeah, no, listen, it's having an active Democratic primary on the other side lessens the pool of independents that will be available to vote in the Republican race, as opposed to 4 years ago when there was no Democratic race. But I haven't spent a lot of my time appealing to independent voters. I've spent my time appealing to Republican voters, which will still make up the majority of the voters in our primary. So I've always had a very natural appeal to independent voters, and I think I'll do well with independent voters here. But there's no strategy on the Christie campaign part to go after and target independent voters. It's more been, this is our record, and if you like it and you want to come over and vote for us, we welcome you. But our efforts have been focused on Republican primary voters here in New Hampshire.
I worked the room at your town hall before you arrived last night and talked to voters. There were a lot of independents who told me that they sometimes vote Democratic, coming to have their first look at you. Do you get a sense that the people in your town halls are shopping? Is it part of the political tourism and the sort of recreation of politics that is part of New Hampshire? Or do you think the people that are hardest for you to get ever give you the chance to be seen in person?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do think the people that are hardest for me to get give me a chance. But I do think that if you look at our town halls, I would say it's probably about a third of people who are fans and want to come and have come frequently. And I would think more than a third are shoppers and are really actively, both Republicans and independents, who are actively shopping to see who they want to vote for. And then there are some stragglers who are the ones who are like, I don't know about this guy, but let me at least show up. I'd put them at, maybe less than a quarter of the people who are, over the course of, 60 or 70 town hall meetings. So it's a good mix most of the time. And Mary Pat and I both get a feel for that when people come up and talk to us afterwards. They're pretty candid here in New Hampshire, and they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking, and that's good for me because that's the way I am too. So they'll tell me if they're still undecided, or if they were undecided, now they've decided for me, or if they didn't like something that they heard. And I've had people come up and tell me that too.
Will you have a campaign beyond New Hampshire?
Yeah. I absolutely, but I got to do well here to earn it. Everybody here has to earn it.
You'll have the money and the staff to go on?
If I earn it, I will, yeah, Kelly, absolutely. The fact is,
sorry, Governor.
That's okay. The fact is, for us, it's always been about New Hampshire. But by the way, it's about New Hampshire for Jeb Bush. It's about New Hampshire for John Kasich. It's about New Hampshire for Carly Fiorina. It's about New Hampshire for Marco Rubio. I mean, the fact is that if you don't do well here, it becomes more difficult for you to raise money, more difficult to gather more supporters no matter where you go, because people know that New Hampshire has had a very good record of picking presidents. They pick nominees fairly well, and you look at their track record, they've done very well at that over the course of time. So what happens here really gives people a sense of whether you're viable or not. So, it's going to be important for me to do well next Tuesday, but I've never hidden that. And I also make very clear, I'm not just going to run. I'm not running here just to have the experience. I'm running to be the president. And if there came a time when I thought I couldn't be president, I'd stop, because I got a great job at home to do, and I've got a great family that I like spending time with. So this is hard, and I'm happy to do it, and I'm excited about doing it. But I'm not one of these folks who's just running because I want the experience. That's not
post-governorship life, you're not.
I had no idea what a post-governorship life looks like. It may be president of the United States. And if it is, that'll be great. And if it isn't, then I'll be 54, 55 years old when I leave the governorship. I'm sure somebody will give me a job.
We appreciate your time, Governor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.